There are wounds that no doctor can diagnose. A kind of emptiness that grows deeper with every failed pregnancy test, every baby shower invitation that feels like a knife to the heart. This is the story of two sisters, one stolen pregnancy and one innocent child caught in between. A story about consequences, about debts that must be paid, and about the terrible price of jealousy. Before we begin, remember this: the universe always collects its debts. Always. Always. If you're ready for this journey, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Trust me, you won't want to miss this. Now, let's begin. Folake sat in the gynecologist's office, her hands gripping the edge of the examination table so hard her knuckles turned white. The doctor's face held that expression she had come to recognize over the past 7 years, the pitying look that said failure before any words were spoken. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Adeyemi," Dr. Coker said gently, removing her gloves. "The results are the same. There's nothing medically wrong with you or your husband. You're both perfectly healthy. Sometimes these things just take time. Time. 7 years was time. 7 years of hope and disappointment. Of pregnancy tests that never showed 2 lines. Of baby showers she had to attend with a smile painted on her face while dying inside. 7 years of her mother-in-law's pointed comments. Of her husband's family wondering aloud if perhaps Dayo had made a mistake marrying her. "How much more time?" Folake's voice cracked. "I'm 34 years old. How much more time do I have, doctor?" Coker had no answer. She never did. Folake drove home through Lagos traffic in a daze, barely seeing the Danfo buses and Okada riders weaving through the gridlock. When she finally pulled into the driveway of their home in Aja, she sat in the car for 10 minutes, gathering the strength to go inside and tell Dayo the news, or rather, the lack of news. Her phone buzzed. A message from her younger sister, Funmi. "Sister Me, guess what? I have amazing news. Come to the house tonight. I'm cooking dinner for you and Dayo." Folake stared at the message, something cold settling in her stomach. Funmi's excitement was practically leaping off the screen. And there was only one kind of news that would make her this happy, that would require a special dinner announcement. No, Folake thought. Please, God, not this. But she knew. Deep in her bones, she knew. That evening, she and Dayo drove to Funmi's apartment in Lekki. Her younger sister had done well for herself, married to Tunde, a successful architect, living in a beautiful flat with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Everything Funmi touched seemed to turn to gold. She had graduated university with first-class honors, landed her dream job at an advertising agency, married the perfect man, and now, Funmi opened the door, glowing, actually glowing. Her skin radiated health and happiness, her eyes sparkled, and her smile was so wide, it looked like it might split her face. "Sister, brother Dayo, come in, come in." She hugged them both, and Folake felt how carefully Funmi embraced her, as if she were made of something precious and fragile, as if she were pregnant. Tunde appeared from the kitchen, grinning just as widely. "Welcome. Sit down, please. Dinner is almost ready." They made small talk, while Funmi and Tunde brought out dishes, jollof rice, peppered chicken, fried plantains, coleslaw, a feast. The kind of meal you prepare for a celebration. Finally, when they were all seated, Funmi and Tunde exchanged a look. He took her hand, and they both turned to face Folake and Dayo with matching smiles. "We have something to tell you," Funmi said, her voice trembling with joy. "We're pregnant, 8 weeks. We just found out last week." The room erupted in noise. Dayo jumped up to congratulate Tunde, shaking his hand and pulling him into a hug. Everyone was talking at once, laughing, celebrating. Everyone except Folake. She sat frozen, her face locked in what she hoped looked like a smile, her hands clasped in her lap to stop them from shaking. Inside, something was screaming. Inside, something was breaking apart into pieces so small they could never be put back together. "Sister?" Funmi's voice cut through the fog. "Sister, aren't you happy?" Folek's head snapped up. She found herself looking into her sister's eyes. Younger sister, beautiful sister, successful sister, and now pregnant sister. "Of course," Folek heard herself say. "Of course I'm happy. Congratulations. This is wonderful news." But the words tasted like poison. Funmi came around the table and hugged her, and Folake hugged her back, feeling her sister's flat stomach pressed against her own empty one. In a few months, there would be a bump there. A baby growing, thriving, preparing to enter the world loved and wanted. Everything Folek had prayed for. Everything that had been denied to her for 7 years. Her younger sister had achieved it in less than 2 years of marriage. "You'll be an auntie," Funmi said excitedly. "Our baby will be so lucky to have you." The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Folak smiled and nodded and said all the right things, while inside she was drowning. When they finally left, she held herself together in the car, maintained her composure all the way home, waited until she and Dio were inside their house with the door closed. Then she fell apart. She collapsed on the bedroom floor and sobbed great, heaving sobs that came from somewhere deep and primal and wounded beyond healing. 7 years of grief came pouring out. 7 years of failed hope and shattered dreams. Dio tried to hold her, but she pushed him away. She didn't want to be comforted. She wanted to rage and scream and curse the unfairness of a universe that gave babies to her younger sister while leaving her womb empty and cold. "It's not fair," she gasped between sobs. "It's not fair. Why her? Why not me? What did I do to deserve this?" Dio had no answers. He never did. That night, Folake couldn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to Dio's breathing beside her. Her mind kept circling back to the same thoughts, over and over. Funmi was pregnant. Young, beautiful, successful Funmi, who had everything, was getting one more thing, and Folake, who had nothing, would get nothing once again. It wasn't right. It wasn't fair. The thought came quietly at first, just a whisper in the dark corners of her mind. What if there was a way? What if you could take what should have been yours? Folake tried to push the thought away, but it persisted, growing louder, more insistent. What if you didn't have to wait anymore? What if you didn't have to be the barren sister, the pitied wife, the woman everyone looked at with sympathy and disappointment? What if you could be the one carrying the baby instead? By morning, the thought had taken root. And like all dark seeds planted in desperate soil, it began to grow. 3 days later, Folake found herself in Mushin again, in the same crowded market streets where people went when modern medicine failed them, when prayers went unanswered, when desperation drove them to seek older, darker solutions. She asked around carefully, discreetly. She wasn't looking for a doctor or a herbalist. She was looking for something else. Someone who dealt in the kind of help that came with a price. The woman she found operated out of a small room behind a fabric shop. She was younger than Folak expected, maybe 50, with sharp eyes that seemed to see straight through her skin to the desperate want beneath. "You want a baby," the woman said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, you want your sister's baby." Folak's breath caught. "How did you—" "I can see it on you, the jealousy, the rage. It's written all over your spirit." The woman leaned back in her chair. "What you're asking for is not small magic. This is not love portion or good luck charm. You want to steal life itself. Can you do it?" The woman studied her for a long moment. "I can, but you must understand what you're asking. This is not adoption. This is not surrogacy. You want to transfer the pregnancy from her womb to yours. You want her baby to become your baby." "Yes." The word came out fierce, final. It will cost you. I have money. Not money, the woman smiled, but there was no warmth in it. This kind of magic always costs more than money. But we'll discuss payment later. First, you must decide if you truly want this. Because once it's done, it cannot be undone. The baby will be yours in body, yours in blood, yours in every way. Your sister will lose it. She will miscarry, and she will never know why. Folake thought about Funmi glowing with happiness, thought about the pregnancy announcement, thought about 7 years of emptiness and pain. I want it, she said. The woman nodded slowly. Then we begin. The ritual required 3 things: something from Funmi's body, something from Folake's body, and the dark of a new moon, when the veil between the spiritual and physical worlds was thinnest. Getting something from Funmi was easier than Folak expected. 2 days after her visit to the woman in Mushin, she went to Funmi's apartment for lunch. While her sister was in the kitchen preparing pepper soup, Folake went to the bathroom and took Funmi's toothbrush, wrapping it carefully in tissue and hiding it in her purse. Her hands shook as she did it. Some part of her, the part that was still her mother's daughter, still the big sister who had braided Funmi's hair and helped her with homework, screamed at her to stop. But that voice was small and getting smaller, drowned out by the louder voice that whispered, "You deserve this. You've suffered enough. Take what should have been yours." The woman in Mushin had given her a small clay pot and very specific instructions. On the night of the new moon, Folake was to fill the pot with water from 7 different sources: rainwater, river water, well water, ocean water, tears, urine, and blood. Then she was to add the toothbrush, 3 strands of her own hair, and speak the incantation the woman had taught her. The hardest part was getting the ocean water. Folake drove to Bar Beach one afternoon, feeling ridiculous as she waded into the waves with a small bottle in her hand. People stared at her, but she didn't care anymore. Desperation had burned away her shame. She collected the tears by watching videos of babies on YouTube late at night, letting herself cry for all the children she didn't have. The urine and blood were her own. The rainwater came from a storm that swept through Lagos 3 days before the new moon. The river water required a trip to Ogun River, a 2-hour drive from Lagos. Folak told Dayo she was visiting a friend. She hated lying to him, but she couldn't tell him the truth. He wouldn't understand. He would try to stop her, and nothing was going to stop her now. The night of the new moon, Dayo worked late at the office. Folake was alone in the house, and she was grateful for it. She locked all the doors, drew all the curtains, and set up the ritual in their bedroom. The clay pot sat in the center of a white cloth on the floor. Folake added each water source carefully, whispering the names as the woman had instructed. The mixture in the pot turned a murky, gray-green color that made her stomach turn. She dropped in Funmi's toothbrush and watched it sink. Then she added 3 strands of her own hair, plucked from her scalp, so they came with the roots attached. The incantation was in a language Folake didn't recognize, old words that felt heavy on her tongue, words that seemed to darken the air as she spoke them. She had practiced for days until she could say them perfectly, and now they flowed out of her like oil, slick and dark. Emitio jbe inu, jbe wasi inu mi, emitio ni omo, funmi ni omo, emitio ni idunu, jibe idunu re, ta tu jibe, ta tu jibe, ta tu je alabo, emini. Life that dwells in another, dwell in me. Spirit that has a child, give me the child. Spirit that has joy, take the joy. What is given, what is taken, what is exchanged. I am the keeper. She repeated it 3 times, 9 times, 27 times. The woman had said the number mattered 3 times, 3 times, 3, a sacred pattern that locked the magic in place. By the time she finished, Folake was drenched in sweat. The room felt thick, heavy, hard to breathe in. The pot of water bubbled, even though there was no heat source beneath it, and steam rose from it, carrying a smell like rotten flowers. Then, suddenly, Everything went still. The bubbling stopped. The steam dissipated. The heaviness in the air lifted. Folake waited, but nothing happened. She sat on the floor beside the pot for an hour, 2 hours, expecting something dramatic, pain, visions, some sign that the magic had worked. But there was nothing, just silence and an ordinary pot of foul-smelling water. Disappointment crashed over her. It hadn't worked. Of course, it hadn't worked. Magic wasn't real. She had wasted her time and money on superstition and desperation. She was cleaning up the ritual, pouring the water down the toilet and washing the pot when the first cramp hit. It started low in her abdomen, a sharp, twisting sensation that made her gasp and grab the bathroom counter. The pain lasted only a few seconds, but it left her shaking. Then came another cramp, and another. Each one stronger than the last, each one centered in her womb. Folake collapsed to the bathroom floor, curled around the pain. This was different from her period cramps. This felt like something was moving inside her, shifting, settling into place. Through the pain, she felt something else, a warmth spreading through her lower belly, a fullness where there had been emptiness. And then, just as suddenly as it started, the pain stopped. Folake lay on the cold bathroom tiles, panting, her hand pressed to her stomach. Beneath her palm, she could swear she felt something different. Not a kick or movement, nothing that obvious, but a presence, a weight, a life. She scrambled to her feet and stared at herself in the mirror. She looked the same. Same face, same body, same flat stomach. But something fundamental had changed. She could feel it. Across Lagos, in her apartment in Lekki, Funmi woke up screaming. Tunde bolted upright beside her. What? What's wrong? Pain! Funmi gasped, her hands clutching her belly. Something's wrong. Something's wrong with the baby. The pain was excruciating, like her insides were being torn out. She curled into a ball, sobbing, while Tunde frantically called for an ambulance. They rushed to the hospital, Funmi crying the entire way, begging God not to let her lose the baby. Please, please, not the baby. At the hospital, doctors ran tests, did an ultrasound, checked everything. Funmi lay on the examination table, Tunde holding her hand, both of them terrified. Finally, the doctor returned with a tablet showing the ultrasound results. Her face was confused, troubled. Mrs. Ogunlade, I don't know how to explain this. When you came in 3 hours ago, you were in severe distress. Your symptoms suggested a miscarriage in progress. But now, she paused, looking at the screen again, as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. There's no baby. What? Tunde stood up. What do you mean, there's no baby? The ultrasound shows no fetus, no gestational sac, nothing. Your wife's uterus is completely empty. But she's pregnant, Tunde's voice rose. We saw the baby 2 weeks ago. We heard the heartbeat. 4. I understand, sir, and I have those records here. I can see that 2 weeks ago, there was definitely a viable pregnancy. But now there's nothing. It's as if the pregnancy simply vanished. Funmi felt the world tilting beneath her. Where's my baby? Where did my baby go? The doctor had no answers. They kept her overnight for observation, ran more tests, consulted with specialists. Everyone was baffled. A pregnancy couldn't just disappear without a miscarriage, without bleeding, without any physical evidence. But it had. By morning, Funmi was discharged with a diagnosis of unknown pregnancy loss and a referral to a therapist. She walked out of the hospital empty in a way that went beyond physical. The baby she had loved, had dreamed about, had already started planning for gone. She called Folake from the car, sobbing so hard she could barely speak. Sister, the baby. I lost the baby. I don't understand what happened. 1 minute, I was pregnant, and the next, gone. Just gone. Folake stood in her own bedroom, her phone pressed to her ear, her free hand resting on her stomach, where new life was settling into place. I'm so sorry, Funmi. she said, and she almost meant it. Almost. These things happen sometimes. It's not your fault. But how? The doctors can't explain it. It's like the baby just vanished into thin air. Maybe it wasn't meant to be, Folake said softly. Maybe God has other plans. After she hung up, Folake went to the bathroom and took out a pregnancy test she had bought on her way home from work. Her hands trembled as she unwrapped it. She took the test and waited. 2 minutes felt like 2 hours. She paced the bathroom, her heart hammering, barely breathing. When she finally looked at the stick, 2 pink lines stared back at her. Positive. Folake sank to the floor, clutching the test to her chest, and laughed through her tears. It had worked. The magic had actually worked. The baby that had been Funmi's was now hers, growing in her womb, becoming her flesh, her blood, her child. She had stolen her sister's pregnancy, and no one would ever know. Folake waited 2 weeks before telling anyone. She wanted to be sure, wanted to see the baby on an ultrasound with her own eyes before she allowed herself to believe it was real. During those 2 weeks, she watched Funmi fall apart. Her sister called every day, sometimes multiple times, crying about the loss. The doctors had no explanation. The hospital kept calling it a missed miscarriage, but that didn't make sense because there had been no tissue, no bleeding, no physical evidence that she had ever been pregnant at all. It was as if the pregnancy had been erased from existence. "I feel crazy," Funmi sobbed over the phone one afternoon. "I know I was pregnant. I saw the ultrasound. I heard the heartbeat, but everyone keeps looking at me like maybe I imagined it." "You didn't imagine it," Folake said, stirring a pot of egusi soup with one hand while holding the phone with the other. "Sometimes these things happen. You just have to heal and try again. That's what Tunde keeps saying. But, sister, I can't shake this feeling that something is wrong. Not medically wrong. Something else. Something," she trailed off. "Something what?" "Never mind. I'm just being paranoid. The grief is making me think crazy thoughts." After they hung up, Folake touched her stomach. It was still flat, but she could feel the difference. A subtle heaviness, a tenderness in her breasts, a strange metallic taste in her mouth in the mornings. She was pregnant. Actually, truly pregnant. Her appointment with Dr. Coker was on a Thursday. Folake told Dayo she had a routine checkup. Nothing special. No need for him to take time off work to accompany her. She wanted this moment for herself. In the examination room, Dr. Coker prepared the ultrasound machine with the same patient professionalism she always showed, not knowing that this appointment would be different from all the others. "Let's take a look," she said, applying cold gel to Folake's abdomen. The wand moved across her skin, and Dr. Coker's eyes fixed on the screen. Then her expression changed: surprise, confusion, delight, all flickering across her face in rapid succession. "Mrs. Adeyemi," she said slowly, "you're pregnant." "What?" Folake tried to sound shocked. "Are you sure?" "Look." Dr. Coker turned the screen so Folake could see. There, in the grainy black and white image, was a small bean-shaped form with a flickering light in the center. "That's the heartbeat. Based on the size, I'd say you're about 9 weeks along." 9 weeks, which was exactly how far along Funmi had been. Folake stared at the screen, tears streaming down her face. But these were real tears, not the practiced ones she'd cried for 7 years of disappointment. These were tears of triumph, of relief so profound it shook her whole body. "I can't believe it," she whispered. "Neither can I, Doctor," Coker admitted. "After 7 years, with no medical explanation for the infertility, and now suddenly, it's a miracle, Mrs. Adeyemi. A genuine miracle. A miracle. Yes, that's what everyone would call it. They would never know the truth that miracles sometimes required darkness, that answered prayers sometimes came with a price paid by someone else." Dr. Coker printed out ultrasound pictures and gave them to Folak, along with a prescription for prenatal vitamins and a list of do's and don'ts for pregnancy. Folake clutched the photos like they were made of gold. That evening, when Dayo came home from work, she met him at the door. She had set up a small celebration in the living room, his favorite food, candles, and the ultrasound pictures placed in an envelope on his plate. "What's all this?" he asked, smiling but confused. "Open the envelope." His hands trembled as he pulled out the ultrasound photos. He stared at them for a long moment, not understanding. Then recognition dawned, and his face transformed. "Folake, is this?" "We're pregnant," she said, and now the tears were flowing again. "I'm 9 weeks pregnant. We're having a baby." Dayo let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. He swept her into his arms, careful even in his joy, not to hold her too tight, as if she might break. "Thank you, God," he kept saying. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." They called their families that night. Folake's mother screamed so loud they had to pull the phone away from their ears. Dayo's mother cried and immediately started making plans to move in with them when the baby came. And then Folake called Funmi. Her sister answered on the first ring, her voice hoarse from crying. "Sister? Funmi, I have something to tell you. I didn't want to say anything before because I wasn't sure, but I'm pregnant." The silence on the other end stretched so long that Folake thought the call had dropped. Then Funmi said, very quietly, "What? I know the timing is terrible. I know you're still grieving. But I found out today, and I wanted you to hear it from me first." More silence. Then, "How far along?" 9 weeks. Folake heard Funmi's sharp intake of breath. 9 weeks. The same as Funmi had been when she lost her baby. The exact same. "I'm happy for you," Funmi finally said, but her voice was flat, empty. "I have to go." She hung up before Folake could respond. On the other end of the line, Funmi sat in her darkened bedroom, staring at her phone. Tunde was asleep beside her, exhausted from days of comforting her. 9 weeks pregnant. The same week Funmi had lost her baby, Folak had conceived. While Funmi had been in the hospital being told her pregnancy had vanished, Folak had been, what? Celebrating a positive pregnancy test she hadn't mentioned? No, Funmi told herself. Don't think like that. Don't let grief make you suspicious of your own sister. But the thought, once planted, began to grow roots. The next few weeks were strange. Folak bloomed. Her skin glowed. Her hair grew thick and shiny. Her body rounded in all the right places. She was one of those lucky women who looked beautiful pregnant, who wore maternity clothes like fashion statements. She posted photos on social media, the ultrasound, her growing belly, Dayo's hand on her stomach. The comments poured in. Miracle baby, God's perfect timing. After the long wait, he answered. And with every post, every update, every excited comment, Folake felt more secure. The baby was hers now. Everyone believed it. Even she was starting to forget where the pregnancy had really come from. Funmi, meanwhile, withered. She lost weight, dark circles appeared under her eyes, and she stopped going to work. She would sit for hours just staring at nothing, her hand pressed to her empty stomach. You need to see someone, Tunde told her one morning, worry etched deep in his face. A therapist. This isn't healthy. I didn't imagine it, Funmi said. I was pregnant. My body knows I was pregnant. I can still feel the empty space where the baby should be. I know, my love. I believe you. But dwelling on it like this isn't helping you heal. I don't want to heal. I want answers. But there were no answers. Just the growing suspicion that she couldn't shake. The coincidence that felt too perfect to be coincidence. One night, unable to sleep, Funmi did something she never thought she would do. She went online and searched pregnancy disappearing, pregnancy stolen, spiritual causes, pregnancy loss. The results were unsettling. Forums full of women discussing spiritual attacks, jealousy curses, stolen pregnancies. Most of it seemed like superstition, but some of the stories made Funmi's blood run cold. One woman wrote, "My pregnancy vanished overnight, and my sister-in-law announced her pregnancy the same week. 9 months later, the baby was born with a birthmark identical to my husband's. The baby was meant to be mine." Another, "I felt the exact moment my baby left my body. It was like something reached in and took it." 3 days later, my cousin, who had been trying for years, suddenly got pregnant. She never even took a test, just knew. Funmi closed her laptop, her hands shaking. She was being ridiculous. Folake was her sister. She loved her. She would never. But the doubt, once seated, was impossible to uproot. At her next family dinner, Funmi watched Folak carefully. Her sister was radiant, laughing easily, accepting congratulations with graceful modesty. She placed protective hands on her growing belly and talked about nursery colors and baby names. And not once did she seem to think about the fact that Funmi had lost a baby the same week she gained one. "Have you thought about names?" their mother asked Folake. "We're thinking Ayomide if it's a girl," Folake said. "It means my joy has arrived." Funmi excused herself to the bathroom and barely made it before she vomited. When she returned to the table, Folake was looking at her with an expression Funmi couldn't quite read. Concern? Guilt? Fear? "Are you okay?" Folake asked. "Fine," Funmi said. "Just haven't been feeling well lately." "You should take care of yourself," their mother said. "All this stress over the miscarriage isn't good for you." "It wasn't a miscarriage," Funmi said sharply. "A miscarriage leaves evidence. My pregnancy just disappeared." The table went quiet. Everyone exchanged uncomfortable glances. "Funmi," their father said gently, "maybe it's time to accept what happened and move forward." "Move forward?" Funmi's voice rose. "My baby disappeared, and my sister got pregnant the exact same week, and I'm supposed to just move forward?" Folake's face went pale. "What are you saying?" "I'm not saying anything. I'm just noticing coincidences." "Funmi," their mother looked horrified. "That's your sister. How can you even suggest?" "I'm not suggesting anything." Funmi stood up. "Tunde, I want to go home." As they left, Funmi looked back and caught Folake watching her with an expression that sent chills down her spine. Not anger, not hurt, fear. And in that moment, Funmi knew. She didn't know how, didn't know the details, didn't have proof. But in her bones, in her empty womb, in the space where her baby should have been, she knew. Folake had done something dark, something unforgivable. And Funmi was going to find out what. Funmi couldn't let it go. While everyone else moved on, while her family celebrated Folak's pregnancy, while Tunde tried to convince her to try for another baby, while her friends awkwardly avoided mentioning children around her, Funmi became obsessed with finding the truth. She started with research. Late at night, while Tunde slept, she dove deep into the internet's darkest corners. Forums about spiritual warfare, blogs about African traditional religion, websites discussing curses and supernatural pregnancy theft. Most of it seemed far-fetched, but some stories were too specific, too similar to her own experience to dismiss. Women who lost pregnancies under mysterious circumstances. Sisters, cousins, friends who suddenly conceived after years of infertility, coinciding perfectly with someone else's loss. One blog post, written by a woman in Ibadan, struck her particularly hard. They call it womb transfer or pregnancy stealing. It's ancient magic, rarely done because the consequences are severe. The child will always know something is wrong, even if they can't articulate it. And the thief? Eventually, the debt must be paid. The universe keeps strict accounts. Funmi screenshot the post and kept searching. She found a phone number for a spiritualist in Abeokuta, a woman named Iya Abike, who specialized in revealing hidden truths. The reviews were mixed. Some people called her a fraud. Others swore she had genuine power. Funmi made the call. "I need to know if my pregnancy was stolen," she said without preamble. Iya Abike was quiet for a moment. Then, "Come and see me. Bring something your sister has touched recently. And bring money. Truth is never free." The following Saturday, Funmi told Tunde she was going shopping with friends. Instead, she drove 2 hours to Abeokuta, her heart pounding the entire way. Iya Abike's compound was modest, a small house surrounded by a clay wall, with chickens pecking in the yard and the smell of incense heavy in the air. The woman herself was ancient, with white hair wrapped in a purple head tie and eyes that seemed to see through time itself. She looked at Funmi and nodded slowly. "You are the one who called, the one whose baby walks in another woman's womb." The words hit Funmi like a physical blow. "So, it's true? Someone stole my pregnancy?" "Sit." Funmi sat on a low wooden stool while Iya Abike prepared lighting candles, burning herbs, spreading cowrie shells on a mat between them. "What did you bring that your sister touched?" Funmi pulled out a silk scarf from her bag. She wore this when she visited last month. She left it behind, and I kept it. Iya Abike took the scarf and held it to her nose, breathing deeply. Her face darkened. "Ah, yes. Strong magic, dark magic, the kind that costs. Can you see what happened?" The old woman scattered the cowrie shells across the mat. They fell in a pattern that meant nothing to Funmi, but made Iya Abike hiss through her teeth. "Your sister was desperate. 7 years without a child. When you became pregnant, something inside her broke. She went to someone who deals in blood magic, transfer magic, blood magic. On the night of the new moon, she performed a ritual. Water from 7 sources, your essence and hers, bound together. The incantation to swap destinies." Funmi's hands clenched into fists. "Can it be undone?" "No." Iya Abike looked at her with something like pity. "The baby is hers now, in body and spirit. To try to take it back would kill the child. The transfer is complete." "So she gets away with it? She steals my baby and there are no consequences?" The old woman's smile was grim. "I didn't say that. Every action has consequences, especially actions this dark. Your sister has bought herself a pregnancy, yes. But she has also bought herself a debt. And the universe always collects its debts. When? The baby will be born. Of that, there is no doubt the magic will ensure a safe pregnancy and delivery. But after, Iya Abike shook her head. After, things will begin to unravel. The child will never bond properly with her. It will cry and never be comforted, because somewhere deep in its soul, it knows the truth. It knows it belongs to you. "I don't want the child to suffer," Funmi said, tears streaming down her face. "This isn't the baby's fault. No, it is your sister's fault, and she will pay." Funmi left Abeokuta with more answers than she'd come with, but none of them brought comfort. Her baby was growing in her sister's womb, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. The magic was done, irreversible. But at least now, she knew she hadn't been crazy. She hadn't imagined her pregnancy. It had been real, and it had been stolen. The drive back to Lagos felt longer than the drive there. Funmi's mind raced with possibilities. Should she confront Folake, tell their parents, go to the police? But what would she even say? "My sister used black magic to steal my pregnancy, and would get her laughed out of any police station, and probably earn her a referral to a psychiatric hospital." She had no proof, no evidence, just the word of an old spiritualist and her own intuition. When she got home, Tunde was in the living room watching football. He looked up as she entered, his face brightening. "Hey, how was shopping with the girls?" Funmi had forgotten her lie. It was, "Fine. I'm tired. I'm going to shower and lie down." In the shower, she let herself cry properly. Great, heaving sobs that echoed off the tiles. Her baby, her precious baby that she'd already loved, already planned for, already imagined holding. Gone, stolen, growing in the body of the person who should have protected her most. How could Folake do this? They were sisters. They had shared a room growing up, shared clothes and secrets and dreams. Funmi had looked up to Folake her entire life, wanted to be like her, wanted to make her proud, and Folake had repaid that love by taking the most precious thing Funmi had ever had. The betrayal cut deeper than the loss itself. That night, Funmi made a decision. She would confront Folake. Not now, not while emotions were raw and the pregnancy was still vulnerable, but after the baby was born, when it was safe, she would make her sister admit what she had done. And then she would make sure everyone knew the truth. The months passed slowly. Folake's pregnancy progressed beautifully. No morning sickness, no complications. Every checkup perfect. She documented everything on social media. Baby shower photos, maternity photo shoots, videos of the baby kicking. She was living Funmi's dream, while Funmi watched from the sidelines, dying inside. At family gatherings, Folake would talk endlessly about the pregnancy, how strong the baby was, how much it moved, how she could already feel its personality. Each word was a knife in Funmi's heart. Their mother fussed over Folake constantly. Don't stress yourself. Eat more vegetables. Make sure you're resting. All the care and concern that would have been directed at Funmi if things had gone as they should. Funmi tried to get pregnant again. She and Tunde tried every month, following doctors' advice, tracking cycles, doing everything right. But month after month, her period came. Her womb remained empty, as if the magic that had stolen her first pregnancy had also stolen her ability to conceive again. Maybe we should consider IVF, Tunde suggested, after 6 months of trying. Maybe, Funmi said, but she knew it wouldn't work. Iya Abike had hinted at it. The magic had consequences for both sisters. Folake would have the baby, but Funmi might never have another. 7 months into Folake's pregnancy, the family threw a baby shower. It was held at their parents' house, a lavish affair with pink and gold decorations, a 3-tier cake, and more gifts than one baby could possibly need. Funmi attended because not attending would have raised questions she wasn't ready to answer. She sat in the corner, smiling when expected, participating in games, pretending her heart wasn't shattering into smaller and smaller pieces. Folake opened gifts, oohing and ahhing over tiny clothes and blankets and toys. She looked radiant, glowing with the kind of joy that Funmi should have been feeling. "Speech! Speech!" someone called out. Folake stood, one hand resting on her enormous belly. "I just want to thank everyone for being here today. This baby is such a blessing." After 7 years of waiting, of praying, of hoping, God finally answered. "This little girl is my miracle, and I promise to love her with everything I have." Everyone applauded. Funmi's nails dug into her palms hard enough to draw blood. After the party, as Funmi was leaving, Folake caught her arm. "Can we talk? Just for a minute?" They went out to the garden, away from the crowd. The evening air was cool, and the sound of celebration drifted from the house behind them. "I know this has been hard for you," Folake said, "watching me be pregnant when you lost your baby. I just want you to know, I think about your loss. I pray for you." Funmi looked at her sister, really looked at her. Folake's face showed concern, sympathy, even sadness. But beneath it, hidden so well that most people would never see it, Funmi detected something else. Satisfaction. Oh, triumph. The smallest hint of smugness. She knew, somewhere in her guilty conscience, Folake knew that Funmi suspected something, and she was reveling in the fact that she had gotten away with it. "Do you?" Funmi asked quietly. "Do you really think about my loss?" "Of course I do. You're my sister." "Am I?" "Because sometimes I wonder what kind of sister you really are." Folake's smile faltered. What do you mean? Nothing. Funmi pulled her arm free. Congratulations on the baby shower. I hope you enjoy your miracle. She walked away, leaving Folak standing in the garden, her hand protectively covering her stolen belly. 2 weeks later, at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, Folak went into labor. The contractions started as a tightening across Folak's belly, mild at first, barely noticeable. She was lying in bed next to Dio when the first real pain hit a deep clenching sensation that made her gasp and sit up. Dio, she shook his shoulder. Dio, wake up! It's time! He was awake instantly, fumbling for the bedside lamp. Are you sure? How far apart are the contractions? I don't know. That was the first real one, but I'm sure. This is it. They had prepared for this moment. The hospital bag was packed and waiting by the door. The car had a full tank of gas. They had practiced the route to the hospital 3 times to avoid getting lost in Lagos traffic even at night. But now that the moment was actually here, Folake felt a surge of panic. This baby, the baby she had stolen, the baby she had taken through dark magic, was about to be born. It would become real in a way it hadn't been before. No longer just a presence in her womb, but an actual person that she would have to look in the face every day. Another contraction hit, stronger this time, pushing aside her doubts. Pain was a good distraction from guilt. They made it to the hospital in record time. The streets were nearly empty at this hour, and Deo drove faster than he normally would, running yellow lights and ignoring speed limits. At the hospital, nurses whisked Folake into a delivery room. They checked her dilation 4 centimeters already, moving fast for a first baby, and hooked her up to monitors. The steady beep of the baby's heartbeat filled the room, strong and healthy. You're doing great, Mrs. Adeyemi, the nurse said. First babies usually take a while, so get comfortable. It could be several more hours. But the baby had other plans. The contractions intensified rapidly, coming faster and harder than the textbooks said they should. Within an hour, Folake was at 7 centimeters. Within another hour, she was fully dilated, and the doctor was telling her to push. Something's wrong, Folake gasped between contractions. This isn't normal. First babies don't come this fast. Every baby is different, the doctor said calmly. Your body knows what to do. Just focus on pushing. But Folake couldn't shake the feeling that something was indeed wrong. The baby was coming too quickly, as if it was desperate to escape her body, as if it knew it didn't belong there and was trying to get out. Dio held her hand, his face pale but encouraging. You can do this. Just breathe. Push when they tell you to push. Folake pushed. She pushed until she thought she would break in half, until she couldn't remember what it felt like to not be in pain. She pushed until the doctor said, I can see the head. One more big push. And then, with a final scream that came from somewhere primal and exhausted, Folake felt the baby slide out of her body. For a moment, there was silence. No cry, no sound at all. Folake's heart stopped. Why isn't she crying? What's wrong? Then the baby let out a wail that filled the room. Not a normal newborn cry, but something that sounded almost like rage, like accusation. It's a girl, the doctor announced, holding up the squirming, screaming infant. A healthy baby girl. End. They placed the baby on Folake's chest for skin-to-skin contact, as they did with all newborns. Folake looked down at her daughter, at Funmi's daughter, and felt a complicated surge of emotions. Love, yes. Wonder, yes. But also guilt so profound it threatened to choke her. The baby had Folake's nose, or at least it looked like it might. But her eyes, when they flickered open, were shaped exactly like Funmi's. Her tiny hands, waving in the air, had fingers the same length as Funmi's fingers. She was a blend of both sisters, because the magic had worked partially. The baby's body had grown from Folake's blood and nutrients, but its soul, its essence, its true origin, that was Funmi's. She's perfect, Dio said, his voice thick with tears. He touched the baby's tiny hand, and she grasped his finger with surprising strength. "Ayomide, our joy has arrived." Folake tried to smile, but the baby was staring at her with dark, knowing eyes. Eyes that seemed too aware for a newborn, too focused. Eyes that seemed to be asking, "Who are you? You're not my mother." They stayed in the hospital for 2 days. Visitors poured in, both sets of grandparents, aunts and uncles, friends from church. Everyone cooed over baby Ayomide, took photos, brought gifts. Funmi came on the 2nd day. She stood in the doorway of the hospital room, looking smaller and more fragile than Folake had ever seen her. Tunde stood behind her, his hand on her shoulder, as if physically supporting her. "Can I hold her?" Funmi asked, her voice barely a whisper. Folake couldn't say no, not without looking suspicious. Of course. She placed Ayomide in Funmi's arms, and the change was immediate. The baby, who had been fussy and crying on and off since birth, who wouldn't settle no matter how much Folake rocked her or fed her, suddenly went completely still. She looked up at Funmi, and a strange expression crossed her tiny face. Recognition. Funmi stared down at the baby in her arms, and tears began rolling down her cheeks. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "Hello." Ayomide made a soft cooing sound, the first peaceful sound she had made since being born. She curled into Funmi's body like she belonged there, like she had finally found home. Everyone in the room commented on it. "Look how calm she is with you, Funmi. She must sense her auntie's love. You're going to be the favorite aunt, for sure." But Folake saw what they didn't see. She saw the way the baby relaxed completely in Funmi's arms, the way Funmi held her with a naturalness that Folake hadn't managed in 2 days of trying, the way they fit together like two puzzle pieces that had been temporarily separated but always belonged to each other. "She's beautiful," Funmi said, still staring at the baby. "What's her name?" "Ayomide," Folake said. Funmi finally looked up, her eyes meeting Falake's across the room. In that look was everything: accusation, grief, knowledge, and a promise. "I know what you did, and one day everyone else will know too." "It suits her," Funmi said quietly. She kissed Ayomide's forehead and reluctantly handed her back to Folake. The moment the baby was back in Folake's arms, she started crying again. Loud, inconsolable wails that nothing could stop. Folake tried everything: nursing, rocking, walking, singing, but Ayomide just cried and cried, her face red, her little fists clenched. She cried like her heart was breaking, like she knew she was in the wrong place with the wrong person. The nurses suggested colic. The doctor prescribed anti-gas medication. Everyone had theories and advice, but deep down, Folake knew the truth. The baby knew. Somehow, on a level beyond words or understanding, Ayomide knew she had been stolen, and she was not happy about it. That night, after all the visitors had left and Dio had gone home to shower and sleep in a real bed, Folake sat alone in the hospital room, holding her crying daughter. "Please," she whispered, "please stop crying. I'm your mother now. I'm all you have. Please just accept me." But Ayomide cried on, and in the sound of her cries, Folake heard the beginning of her punishment. Iya Abike had been right. The baby would never bond properly, would never be comforted, would never look at Folake with the love that should exist between mother and child. Folake had stolen a pregnancy, but she would never truly have a daughter. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She had been so focused on getting pregnant, on finally having a baby after 7 years, that she hadn't thought about what came after. She hadn't considered that motherhood was more than just carrying a child for 9 months. It was a lifetime of connection, of bonding, of love freely given and received. And she had poisoned that well before it could even be filled. Folake cried too then, holding her crying baby, both of them mourning different losses in the quiet darkness of the hospital room. The first month was hell. Ayomide cried constantly. Not the normal crying of a newborn adjusting to the world, but a desperate, heartbroken wailing that never truly stopped. Even when she slept, which was rarely, she would whimper and flinch as if having nightmares. Folake tried everything. She switched formulas, thinking maybe she had a milk allergy. She tried different swaddles, white noise machines, special sleeping positions. She took Ayomide to 3 different pediatricians who all said the same thing. There's nothing physically wrong with her. Some babies are just fussy. But this wasn't fussy. This was anguish. Dio tried to help, but he had to go back to work after 2 weeks of paternity leave. He would come home exhausted to find Folake even more exhausted. Both of them taking shifts, walking the floor with a screaming baby. Maybe we should hire a nanny, Dio suggested one night, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. We can't afford a full-time nanny right now, Folake snapped. Then, softer, I'm sorry. I'm just so tired. They tried bringing in Folake's mother to help. But even with her grandmother's experienced hands, Ayomide would not be consoled. She cried and cried until Folake's mother looked at her with troubled eyes. This is not normal, she said quietly. I raised 2 children. I helped raise 4 grandchildren. I've never seen a baby cry like this. It's like she's mourning something. I can't. The words sent ice through Folake's veins. At 6 weeks, Folake was at her breaking point. She hadn't slept more than 2 hours at a stretch in over a month. Her body ached from carrying the baby constantly. Her milk was drying up from stress. She looked in the mirror and barely recognized herself, hollow-eyed, gaunt, aged 10 years in 6 weeks. And through it all, Ayomide cried. One night, at 3 a.m., after hours of unsuccessful soothing, Folake found herself standing at the nursery window with the crying baby in her arms, looking out at the dark street below. A terrible thought crossed her mind. What if I just let go? The thought horrified her so much that she immediately put Ayomide in the crib and backed away, her hands shaking. What kind of monster was she becoming? First, stealing a baby, and now she called Funmi. It was the middle of the night, completely inappropriate, but Folake was desperate. The phone rang 4 times before Funmi answered, her voice groggy. Hello? Funmi, I need help, please. The baby won't stop crying. I don't know what to do. I'm afraid I'm going to hurt her. Not on purpose, but I'm so tired. I can barely think, and please, can you come over? There was a long pause. Then, I'll be there in 30 minutes. Funmi arrived wrapped in a coat over her nightgown, her hair uncombed, but her eyes were alert and focused. She walked into the nursery where Ayomide was screaming in her crib, and without a word, she picked up the baby. Immediately, Ayomide's cries reduced to whimpers. Within minutes, she was quiet, her little face pressed against Funmi's shoulder, her body relaxed and trusting. The silence was deafening. Folake stood in the doorway, watching her sister hold her daughter, or was it Funmi's daughter, and seeing what she had tried so hard to deny. How do you do that? Folake whispered. Funmi looked at her, and in her eyes was a mixture of sadness and something harder. She knows me. Somehow, she knows me. That's impossible. You've only held her a few times. Is it? Funmi swayed gently, rocking the now sleeping baby. Is it really impossible, Folake? Or is there something you're not telling me? Folake's mouth went dry. I don't know what you mean. I think you do. Funmi walked to the rocking chair and sat down, still holding Ayomide. I went to see someone, a spiritualist. She told me interesting things about pregnancy transfer, about stolen babies, about dark magic that has consequences. Folake felt the room tilting. You can't believe that superstitious nonsense. Can't I? Then explain this. Funmi gestured to the peaceful baby in her arms. Explain why your daughter won't stop crying for you, but falls asleep the moment I hold her. Explain why I lost my pregnancy the exact night you conceived. Explain why my baby, yes, I said, My baby disappeared without a trace, while yours appeared out of nowhere after 7 years of nothing. You're grieving. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in months. Funmi stood up, still holding the sleeping Ayomide. This is my daughter, Folake. I don't know how you did it, but you stole her from my womb and put her in yours, and she knows. Even as a baby, somehow she knows she's in the wrong place with the wrong person. That's crazy, is it? Then why are you crying? Folake realized tears were streaming down her face. She wiped at them angrily. You have no proof. Even if what you're saying was true, which it's not, you have no proof. I don't need proof for me to know the truth, but you're right. I can't take her from you legally. The birth certificate says you're her mother. The hospital records say you gave birth to her. On paper, she's yours. Funmi walked closer, and Folake saw something in her sister's eyes that she had never seen before. Not anger, not even hatred, something colder and more final. But listen to me carefully, Folake. This baby will never truly be yours. She'll grow up feeling like something is missing, like she doesn't quite belong. She'll cry for someone she can't name. She'll search for something she can't identify, and you'll watch it happen, and you'll know it's because of what you did. That will be your punishment. Not prison, not exposure, but a lifetime of knowing you stole something precious and can never truly have it. She placed Ayomide back in the crib. The baby stirred, but didn't wake, didn't cry. I'll come by regularly to help with her, Funmi said, walking to the door. Not for you, for her, because she deserves to have at least one person who she feels connected to, even if that person is just supposed to be her aunt. After Funmi left, Folake stood in the nursery for a long time, watching her daughter sleep peacefully for the first time in weeks. And she realized that Funmi was right. The punishment had already begun, and it would last forever. Ayomide grew, but the problems didn't go away. They just evolved. As a toddler, she was clingy with everyone except Folak. She would reach for Dayo, for her grandparents, for neighbors, and strangers. But when Folake tried to hold her, Ayomide would stiffen and pull away, sometimes even crying. She'll grow out of it, the pediatrician said. Some children are just particular about who they bond with. But Folake knew better. This wasn't preference. This was rejection. The worst part was watching Ayomide with Funmi. Her sister came over twice a week, ostensibly to help with childcare, but really to spend time with the daughter that should have been hers. When Funmi arrived, Ayomide would light up like a sunrise. She would run to the door, arms outstretched, shouting, "Auntie Funmi," with pure joy. She would spend hours playing with Funmi, chattering away in her toddler language, laughing at everything Funmi said. And when it was time for Funmi to leave, Ayomide would cry real tears, heartbroken sobbing, and beg her to stay. "Don't go, Auntie, please don't go." Funmi would hug her tight. "I have to go, sweet girl, but I'll come back soon. I promise. I want to go with you." And Folake would watch this exchange, feeling like a ghost in her own home, invisible and irrelevant to her own child. Dayo noticed, of course. "Why does she love your sister so much?" he asked one night, after Funmi had left and Ayomide had cried herself to sleep. "I don't know," Folake lied. "Maybe Funmi is just better with children. But you're her mother. That bond should be the strongest." Should be, but wasn't, because the bond was based on a lie, built on stolen ground, poisoned at its very foundation. As Ayomide turned 3, then 4, the distance grew wider instead of narrowing. She was a bright, beautiful child, with Funmi's smile and Folake's eyes a constant reminder of the theft every time Folake looked at her. Ayomide developed anxiety, particularly around bedtime. She would cry for hours, saying she had bad dreams, that she felt scared for no reason she could explain. "I don't feel right," she told Folake one night, her 4-year-old face scrunched with confusion. "I feel like I'm in the wrong place. like I'm supposed to be somewhere else. Folake's blood ran cold. What do you mean, baby? I don't know. I just feel wrong. Do you ever feel wrong? No, sweetheart. This is your home. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. But Ayomide shook her head stubbornly. No, something's not right. I wish I could go home. Ayomide, you are home. Not this home. My other home. The place I'm supposed to be. Folake couldn't explain it away anymore. Couldn't pretend it was normal childhood fears or an overactive imagination. Ayomide felt the wrongness because there was wrongness. The magic had transferred her body, but some essential part of her, her spirit, her soul, her true self, knew the truth. Folake's marriage began to crack under the strain. Dio couldn't understand why their daughter didn't bond with her mother. He tried to be supportive, but Folake could see the confusion and disappointment in his eyes. Maybe you should see a therapist, he suggested. Maybe there's some postpartum depression that never got addressed. It's not depression. Then what is it? Because I'm watching my daughter grow up barely acknowledging her own mother, and I don't understand why. You're a good mother, Folak. You try so hard. But it's like she can't see you, like there's a wall between you two. Maybe there is, Folake said quietly. Then break it down. Do whatever you have to do, because this isn't healthy for either of you. But how could she break down a wall built with dark magic and sealed with stolen destiny? How could she fix something that was fundamentally, spiritually broken? Folake went back to Mushin, back to the woman who had given her the ritual. She found the fabric shop, found the back room, but the woman was gone. The new occupant, a young man selling electronics, said he'd never heard of anyone matching her description. This has been an electronics shop for 3 years, he said. Ain't never been nothing else here. Folake walked the alleys, asking vendors, searching for any trace of the woman with the sharp eyes and gold teeth. But it was as if she had never existed. As if she had been a ghost, appearing only long enough to damn Folake and then vanishing forever. She was trapped, bound to a daughter who would never love her, married to a husband who couldn't understand why, watched by a sister who knew the truth but couldn't prove it. By the time Ayomide turned 5, Folake had developed insomnia and anxiety. She would lie awake at night, listening to her daughter breathe in the next room, wondering what kind of adult Ayomide would become. Would she grow up feeling incomplete? Would she spend her life searching for something she couldn't name? Would she hate Folake when she was old enough to understand that something was fundamentally wrong with their relationship? One day, Ayomide came home from kindergarten with a drawing. It showed 3 stick figures herself in the middle, Dio on one side, and on the other side, not Folak, but Funmi. This is my family, Ayomide explained proudly, showing her father the picture. Dio looked at it, then at Folak. Why is Auntie Funmi in the picture instead of Mommy? Ayomide shrugged. I like Auntie Funmi better. I wish she was my mommy. The words, spoken with childish honesty and no malice, cut deeper than any intentional cruelty could have. That night, Folake locked herself in the bathroom and finally admitted the truth to herself. She had committed an unforgivable sin, and her punishment was watching her daughter grow up wishing she belonged to someone else. The universe was keeping accounts, just like Iya Abike had said, and Folak's debt was coming due. Everything came crashing down on Ayomide's 6th birthday. Folake had planned an elaborate party at their house. Bouncy castle, magician, catering, the works. She desperately wanted to create happy memories with her daughter, wanted one day where Ayomide would look at her with joy instead of distance. The party was going well. Children ran around screaming with delight. Parents mingled and complimented Folake on the setup. Ayomide seemed happy, playing with her friends, laughing at the magician's tricks. But when it was time to cut the cake, when everyone gathered around to sing happy birthday, Ayomide looked around the crowd and her face fell. Where's Auntie Funmi? She asked. Folake's smile froze. She'll be here soon, sweetie. Let's cut the cake. No, I want to wait for Auntie Funmi. But all your friends are waiting. I don't care. Ayomide's voice rose on the edge of tears. I want Auntie Funmi. Where is she? The truth was that Funmi had called that morning to say she couldn't make it. She had food poisoning, was in bed, couldn't travel. Folake had chosen not to tell Ayomide, hoping she would be too distracted by the party to notice. She had been wrong. Auntie Funmi is sick, baby. She wanted to come, but she can't. Then I don't want a party. Ayomide shoved the cake table, and the beautiful 3-tier princess cake wobbled dangerously. I don't want it without Auntie Funmi. Parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. Dio hurried over to calm Ayomide down, but she was beyond reason, crying and screaming in a way she hadn't since she was a baby. I hate this. I hate everything. I want Auntie Funmi. I want my real. She stopped, her eyes going wide, as if surprised by what she had been about to say. Falake's heart stopped. Your real what, Ayomide? But Ayomide just shook her head and ran into the house, slamming her bedroom door. The party ended early. Parents collected their confused children and left with awkward goodbyes. The entertainer packed up. The catering staff cleared away uneaten food. Folake stood in the debris of the failed party and felt something inside her break completely. She found Dio in Ayomide's room, sitting on the bed while their daughter cried into his shoulder. She won't tell me what's wrong, Dio said helplessly. She just keeps crying. Can I talk to her alone? Folake asked. Dio hesitated, then nodded and left, closing the door behind him. Folake sat on the edge of the bed, not touching Ayomide, just sitting nearby. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Finally, Ayomide's crying subsided to sniffles. She turned her tear-stained face toward Folake. Why don't you feel like my mommy? She asked. The question, asked with such painful honesty, deserved an honest answer. But what could Folake say? How do you explain dark magic and stolen pregnancies to a 6-year-old? What do you mean? Folake asked softly. Other kids, when they talk about their mommies, they feel warm and happy. But when I think about you, I just feel empty, like something's missing. Like you're supposed to be someone else, or I'm supposed to be somewhere else. Ayomide's eyes filled with tears again. Am I broken? Is there something wrong with me? No, Folake said fiercely. No, baby, there's nothing wrong with you. Then why don't I love you like I'm supposed to? The words hung in the air between them, brutal in their simplicity. Folake realized she had a choice. She could continue the lie, continue trying to force a bond that would never form naturally, or she could tell the truth and accept the consequences. She chose truth. Because, Folake said slowly, something did go wrong. Not with you, with me. I did something very bad, a long time ago, before you were born. Ayomide sat up, her eyes wide and focused on Folake's face. You know how you love Auntie Funmi so much? How you feel safe and happy with her? Ayomide nodded. There's a reason for that. Before you were born, you were supposed to be Auntie Funmi's baby. But I took you. I used bad magic to make you grow in my tummy instead of hers. So even though I gave birth to you, even though I'm your mommy on paper, part of you knows the truth. Part of you knows you were supposed to belong to someone else. Folake expected Ayomide to call her crazy, to not understand, to run away screaming. But instead, the little girl just nodded slowly. I knew it, she whispered. I always knew something was wrong. That's why I feel confused all the time. That's why I don't feel right. Yes? So Auntie Funmi is really my mommy? She's supposed to be. I stole that from her. I stole you from her because I was jealous and desperate, and I made a terrible, terrible choice. Ayomide was quiet for a long time, processing. Then she asked the question Folake had been dreading. Can I go live with her? Can I go be with my real mommy? And there it was, the final punishment, the ultimate consequence of Folake's sin. Her daughter, old enough now to make a choice, choosing Funmi over her. That's not my decision to make, Folake said, tears streaming down her face. That's between you, Auntie Funmi, and your daddy. But I need to tell them the truth first. Everyone needs to know what I did. Will you go to jail? Maybe. I don't know. But I deserve whatever happens to me. Ayomide looked at her for a long moment, and something in her young face shifted. Not love. Folake knew she might never have that, but maybe understanding. Maybe the beginning of compassion. You seem sad, Ayomide said quietly. I am sad. I'm very sad. I hurt people I love, and now everyone is paying for my mistake, especially me. Especially you. And I'm so sorry. That evening, after the party guests were gone and the house was cleaned up, Folake called a family meeting. Her parents, Dayo's parents, Funmi and Tunde, everyone gathered in the living room, confused about the urgency. Ayomide sat next to Funmi on the couch, holding her hand. Folake stood in front of them all, her hands shaking, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. There's something I need to tell you all. Something I should have confessed a long time ago. Dayo looked worried. Folake, what's going on? Let me speak, please. This is hard enough. And then she told them everything. The 7 years of infertility and growing jealousy, Funmi's pregnancy announcement, the woman in Mushin, the ritual on the night of the new moon. The magic that stole Funmi's pregnancy and transferred it to her own womb. The room was silent, except for her voice. People stared at her, with expressions ranging from disbelief to horror to rage. When she finished, the silence stretched on unbearably. Finally, her mother spoke, her voice barely a whisper. You're lying. You must be lying. My daughter would never... It's true, Mummy. All of it. Ayomide is Funmi's biological child. I stole her, and I've been living with that sin for 6 years. Dayo stood up, his face pale. This is insane. You're saying you used witchcraft? Magic? That's not possible, asked Funmi. Folake said. She already knows. She's known for years. Everyone turned to look at Funmi. She sat very still, tears running down her face, one arm around Ayomide. It's true, Funmi said quietly. I went to see a spiritualist after I lost my baby. She told me what happened. I've known since Ayomide was born that she was supposed to be mine. Why didn't you say something? Their father demanded. What could I say? Who would believe me? And even if they did, what could anyone do? The magic was done. It couldn't be undone without hurting the baby. Dayo was shaking his head, backing away from Folake as if she were a stranger. This is crazy. This is absolutely insane. Even if I believed in magic, which I don't, why would you do this? Why would you steal from your own sister? Because I was desperate, Folake said. Because I thought I was going to die without having a child. Because jealousy poisoned my mind until I couldn't think straight anymore. You let me believe she was mine, Dayo said, his voice breaking. You let me fall in love with her, thinking she was our daughter. What else have you been lying about? Nothing else. I swear, everything else was real. My love for you is real. I made one terrible choice, and it destroyed everything. Dayo's mother stood up abruptly. We're leaving. We won't be part of this madness. Wait, Ayomide's small voice cut through the chaos. Everyone turned to look at her. I believe Mommy. I believe Auntie Folake. She's telling the truth. I always knew something was wrong. I could feel it. Dayo stared at his daughter. Ayomide, you're 6 years old. You can't possibly. But I can. I do. And I want to go live with Auntie Funmi, with my real mommy. The words landed like bombs. Dayo looked like he'd been struck. Folake's parents gasped. Even Funmi looked shocked. Sweetheart, "It's not that simple," Tunde said gently. "We can't just—" "Why not?" Ayomide turned to Funmi. "You're my real mommy, right? So why can't I live with you?" Funmi looked at Folak, and in that moment, something passed between the sisters. Not forgiveness, that might never come, but perhaps understanding. Perhaps the recognition that they were both victims of the same jealousy, the same curse, the same broken magic. "Because," Funmi said carefully, "even though you were supposed to be mine, Auntie Folake is the one who carried you, who gave birth to you, who raised you for 6 years. That counts for something, and Uncle Dayo is your father in every way that matters. I can't just take you away from them." "Even though you want to?" Ayomide asked, with heartbreaking perception. Funmi's voice broke. "Even though I want to." The meeting dissolved into arguments, tears, and accusations. Dayo's parents left in disgust. Folake's parents stayed, torn between horror at their daughter's actions and the instinct to protect their family. The conversation went on for hours, going in circles, solving nothing. Finally, as midnight approached, they reached a temporary agreement. There would be DNA tests, even though everyone already knew what they would show. There would be lawyers, family court, decisions about custody and visitation. Everything would be done properly, legally, with Ayomide's best interests at heart. But nothing could undo what had been done. That night, Dayo slept in the guest room. Ayomide slept in Funmi's arms on the couch, unwilling to be separated from her. And Folake lay alone in her bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of her sin crushing her chest. She had gotten what she wanted 6 years ago. She had gotten pregnant, given birth, been called mommy, even if it never felt quite right. But the cost had been everything else: her sister's trust, her husband's love, her daughter's bond, her own peace of mind. The universe kept accounts, and Folake's debt was now being paid in full. In the darkness of her bedroom, Folake heard a sound that made her blood run cold, a low buzzing, barely audible at first, but growing louder. She sat up, her heart racing. The sound was coming from outside, from the direction of the window. When she pulled back the curtain, she saw them. Bees. Not a full swarm like the stories warned about, but enough. Dozens of them, crawling on the outside of her window, their bodies pressing against the glass. A message, a reminder, a promise. The universe always collected its debts, always balanced the scales. And for Folake Adeyemi, who had stolen life itself, the collection was just beginning. The DNA tests confirmed what everyone already knew. Genetically, Ayomide was Funmi's daughter, matched her DNA perfectly for a mother-child relationship. The connection to Folak was complicated. She had carried the baby, her body had nourished it, but the fundamental genetic material was Funmi's. The doctors couldn't explain it. The lawyers had no precedent for it. It was medically impossible, yet the evidence was undeniable. In the end, the court ruled in a way that satisfied no one and hurt everyone. Ayomide would live primarily with Funmi and Tunde, her biological parents, but Folake would have visitation rights as the woman who had carried and birthed her. Dayo, caught in the middle of a situation he never asked for and still barely believed, would share custody with Funmi. It was messy and complicated and painful, but it was the best anyone could do with an impossible situation created by dark magic and darker jealousy. The day Ayomide moved to Funmi's house, Folake helped her pack. They worked in silence mostly, folding clothes and organizing toys. "Are you mad at me?" Ayomide asked, as Folake placed her favorite stuffed elephant in a box. "No, baby, I'm not mad at you. You didn't do anything wrong. But I'm leaving you. You're going to be with your real mommy. That's where you always should have been." Ayomide considered this. "Can I still visit you sometimes?" "Of course, whenever you want." "Will you be okay? You look sad all the time now." Folake knelt down so she was eye level with her daughter, or the child she had thought was her daughter. "I'll be okay eventually. This is my punishment for what I did. I have to accept it. I hope your punishment ends someday, Ayomide said, with the innocent wisdom of children. I hope you can be happy again. Thank you, sweetheart. I hope so too. But as Folake watched Funmi's car drive away, with Ayomide waving from the back window, she knew that some debts take a lifetime to pay. Some sins can't be forgiven, only endured. She had stolen a womb, stolen a pregnancy, stolen a child. And the universe had taken everything in return. Her marriage crumbled within months, her relationship with her parents never recovered, and her own womb, as if in cosmic irony, remained forever empty after Ayomide. She tried to conceive again, desperate to fill the void, but it never happened. She had gotten one child through dark magic, and that would be all she would ever have. And that child would never truly be hers. Years later, when Ayomide was 12, she wrote an essay for school about family. She wrote about having two mothers, one who gave her life and one who carried her into the world. She wrote about forgiveness and consequences and the complicated nature of love. She gave the essay to both Funmi and Folake to read. Folake read it alone. In her small apartment, she'd moved out after the divorce, downsized her life to match her diminished circumstances. As she read her daughter's words about learning to love both mothers despite the painful history, tears streamed down her face. At the bottom of the essay, Ayomide had written a note in her own handwriting. Dear Auntie Folake, I still don't know what to call you. I'm learning that people make mistakes, even big ones. I'm learning that jealousy can make us do terrible things. But I'm also learning about forgiveness. I'm not there yet, but maybe someday. Love, Ayomide. Maybe someday. Not today. Maybe not for years. But someday. It was more than Folake deserved, and less than she desperately wanted. But it was something. A small seed of possibility planted in scorched earth. And perhaps, after a lifetime of paying for her sin, that seed might grow into something resembling redemption. Or perhaps it wouldn't. Perhaps some things, once broken, stay broken forever. Either way, Folake had learned the hardest lesson of all. You can steal someone's destiny, but you can never truly make it yours. The universe knows the difference. And in the end, the universe always collects its debt. Moral of the story: jealousy and desperation can drive us to commit terrible sins, but stolen blessings never bring true happiness. What we take through darkness will never settle into our lives with peace. The consequences of our actions ripple outward, hurting not just those we wrong, but also ourselves and even the innocent. True fulfillment can only come through honest means, and the universe will always demand balance. What is taken will be paid for threefold.